When my daughter-in-law told me to leave the house, I did not cry. I smiled instead. It was not because I was strong, and it was not because I agreed with her. I smiled because I did not know what else to do. My heart felt heavy, but my face stayed calm. I had spent my whole life learning how to stay quiet when things hurt. She stood in front of me and spoke slowly, as if choosing her words carefully. She said she needed peace. She said the house felt crowded. Then she said something that stayed with me long after she stopped talking. She said I was no longer part of their family. I nodded as if I understood. Inside, something broke very gently. That house had been my home for more than 30 years. I raised my son there. I took care of my husband there until the day he passed away. Every wall carried memories, and every room knew my footsteps. I never imagined I would be told that I no longer belonged there. Still, I said nothing. Silence had always felt safer than speaking. After my husband died, my son became my whole world. I planned my days around him. I waited for him to come home. I worried about his health, his work, his future. When he told me he wanted to get married, I was happy for him. I believed marriage would add joy to our lives, not distance. I prayed that his wife would feel at home with us, just as I once tried to feel at home in my own marriage. In the beginning, things were peaceful. She was polite and respectful. She spoke gently and smiled often. I tried to give her space. I tried not to interfere. I reminded myself that every new relationship needs time. I believed patience would solve everything. I believed love was enough. Slowly, small changes began to appear. Conversations became shorter. Meals became quieter. My son spent less time with me and more time in his room. I told myself this was normal. I told myself I was overthinking. I did not want to create problems where none existed. I noticed that I started feeling careful in my own home. I thought before speaking. I waited before entering a room. I measured my words as if they were heavy objects. I did not want to upset anyone. I did not want to be seen as a burden. I believed that if I stayed quiet, things would settle on their own. One evening, I heard my name from another room. It was not called out to me, it was spoken about me. The tone was low and serious. I stood still and listened without meaning to. She said she felt uncomfortable. She said she wanted privacy. She said I was too involved. I stepped back quietly, hoping they would not notice me. That night, I did not sleep well. I lay awake thinking about every small thing I had done. I wondered if my care had felt like control. I wondered if my presence had felt heavy. I promised myself I would step back even more. I decided I would not give advice unless asked. I decided I would not express opinions. I decided I would take up less space. Days passed, then weeks. I stayed mostly in my room. I ate alone when I could. I avoided the kitchen if she was there. I did not want tension. I wanted peace, even if that peace came at the cost of my own comfort. I believed this sacrifice was part of being a mother. My son noticed something was different. Once he asked if I was feeling well. I told him I was fine. I did not want to put him in a difficult position. I did not want him to feel torn between his wife and his mother. I believed my silence would protect him. But silence has a way of growing into distance. The more I stayed quiet, the less I felt seen. Decisions were made without me. Changes happened without explanation. I felt like a guest in the home where I once felt rooted. Still, I reminded myself that love requires adjustment. I often thought about my younger years. I remembered how difficult it was to build a life with someone new. I remembered the fear of making mistakes. I told myself to be kind. I told myself to be patient. I told myself that understanding meant enduring discomfort without complaint. Then one afternoon, she asked to speak with me. Her voice was calm but serious. We sat across from each other. She did not shout, she did not accuse. She spoke carefully, like someone who had already made up her mind. She said she felt overwhelmed. She said she needed space. She said things could not continue the same way. I listened quietly. I nodded when she spoke. Inside, I felt confused and tired. I wanted to explain myself, but I did not know how. Every word felt like it might make things worse. So I chose the response I had used my whole life. I said I understood, even though I did not. After that conversation, something changed inside me. I realized that patience alone would not fix everything. I realized that love, when unspoken, can be misunderstood. Still, I held on to hope. I believed time would soften things. I believed my son would speak up if things went too far. I did not know how close I was to being asked to leave the only home I had ever known. After that conversation, I became even more careful. I moved through the house like someone who did not want to be noticed. I woke up early and stayed in my room longer. I waited until the kitchen was empty before making tea. I told myself this was temporary, that things would slowly return to normal if I stayed patient. But instead of improving, the distance grew deeper. My son spoke less. When he did speak, his words felt rushed. He avoided long conversations and rarely sat with me. I could see that something was troubling him, but I did not ask. I was afraid of the answer. I started noticing small things that hurt more than they should have. Family plans were made without telling me. Guests were invited without asking. Decisions about the house were taken as if I no longer lived there. Each time I reminded myself that change is part of life. Still, it felt like I was slowly being erased.
Months passed. I grew quieter, but also stronger. I no longer felt the need to explain myself. I no longer felt guilty for existing. I began to understand that love does not always guarantee respect, and silence does not always earn acceptance. One evening, my sister received a call. It was from my son. She handed me the phone without saying anything. My heart beat faster, but I stayed calm. He told me his wife was not well. He said she had been crying often. He said she felt lonely and confused. I listened without interrupting. I did not feel anger. I felt tired understanding. He said she wanted to speak to me. He asked if I would be willing to talk. I did not answer right away. I needed time. I told him I would think about it. When the call ended, I sat alone and reflected. I asked myself what I wanted, not what was expected of me, not what would make others comfortable, what I wanted. That night, I wrote everything down: my hurt, my silence, my mistakes, my strength. I realized I had not left that house because I was weak. I had left because I was pushed to choose dignity over comfort. By morning, my decision was clear. I was ready to speak, not to defend myself, not to blame anyone, but to finally speak honestly, without fear. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control of my own voice. I waited a full day before making the call. I wanted my thoughts to be clear and my heart to be steady. When I finally called, she answered after a short pause. Her voice sounded tired, not angry, just tired. I told her I was ready to talk. I asked her to speak honestly. She stayed quiet for a moment, then she began. She said she never planned to hurt me. She said she felt lost after marriage and did not know how to share space with another woman in the house. She said fear made her act cold. I listened carefully. I did not interrupt her. I wanted to hear everything, even the parts that hurt. When she finished, I spoke slowly. I told her I never wanted control or attention. I only wanted respect and a sense of belonging. I told her that staying silent was my way of keeping peace, but that silence slowly erased me. Her voice changed when she replied. She said she did not realize how alone I had felt. She said she thought I was strong enough to handle everything. She admitted that pushing me away felt easier than facing her own insecurity. For the first time, she said she was sorry. Later, my son joined the call. His voice sounded heavy. He said he should have spoken earlier. He said avoiding conflict was a mistake. He admitted that his silence hurt me more than words ever could. I told him I did not need explanations. I needed understanding. That conversation did not fix everything, but it opened a door that had been closed for a long time. We did not argue. We did not blame. We spoke calmly, like people who finally understood the cost of silence. A few days later, my son came to visit me. He sat across from me and looked older than I remembered. He said he missed me. I told him I missed him too, but I also told him I would not return to the same pain. I said any relationship we rebuilt would need honesty and respect. He agreed. Not quickly, not easily, but sincerely. I did not move back to the house. I chose to stay where I felt safe. That decision was not made out of anger. It was made out of self-respect. I learned that love does not mean staying where you are slowly disappearing. She visited me once. She asked before coming in. That small act meant more than any apology. We sat together and spoke about simple things. There was still distance, but there was also effort, and effort is where healing begins. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a problem, not as a burden, just as a person. Life did not return to what it once was, and I no longer expected it to. I learned that some chapters close quietly, without warning, and without asking for permission. Accepting that truth brought me peace I did not know I needed. I stayed with my sister. Over time, that place began to feel like home, not because it was perfect, but because I felt safe there. I could speak when I wanted. I could be silent without fear. I could exist without explaining myself. My son began calling more often. Not every day, but enough to remind me that I still mattered to him. Our conversations were simple. We talked about daily life, small worries, and memories from the past. We did not reopen old wounds. We let them heal naturally. My daughter-in-law and I kept our distance, but it was no longer cold. There was respect where there had once been tension. We spoke carefully, honestly, and without expectations. I understood that not all relationships are meant to be close. Some are meant to be peaceful. I spent more time with myself. I learned to enjoy quiet mornings and slow evenings. I stopped measuring my worth by how needed I was. I understood that love does not disappear when roles change. It simply takes a new shape. Sometimes I thought about the house I left behind. I remembered the laughter, the struggles, and the years I gave without question. I no longer felt bitterness. I felt acceptance. That place was part of my life, but it was not my whole life. I realized that staying silent for too long had cost me my voice, but finding it again gave me strength. I learned that patience should not mean losing yourself. Kindness should not require suffering. Love should not ask you to disappear. If someone listening to this story feels unseen in their own family, I want them to know this. You are allowed to choose dignity. You are allowed to protect your peace. Walking away does not always mean failure. Sometimes it means survival. Today, I wake up with calm in my heart. I no longer wait for permission to feel at home. I carry my home within me now, and that is something no one can take away. This is not a story of anger or revenge. It is a story of quiet strength. It is about learning when to stay and when to let go. And most of all, it is about choosing yourself when no one else does.